The Hard Truth with Akosia Konedu, only on Viasat 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank.
Fellow Ghanaians, as 7 December approaches, we must continue to remind ourselves that we only have one Ghana, and we must strive to maintain the peace and tranquility that we enjoy as a people. Though we may have different views and support different political parties, our hope is to see a prosperous and united nation where we can enjoy the fruit of development as a people together. Let us stand for peace before, during, and after the elections. My name is Nana Akosia Konedu Asante Samuels, and I stand for peace. You are watching The Hard Truth, and proudly brought to you by Octoglow Ghana Limited and supported by EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. Richard Frimpong Oppong, an associate professor at the Faculty of Law, Thompson River University in Canada. So, again, there's been some reports that the prosecutor's office of the ICC is ready to initiate a full investigation on a range of, possible war crimes and war against humanity in Afghanistan, including some, U.S. personnel. Again, do you think that this is really possible, and are we likely to see the ICC and the U.S. in a possible collusion cause?
Yeah, I think it's long overdue. I think we are all aware of the situation in Afghanistan, which is terrible. We are all aware of the situation in Syria, which is more terrible than the situation in many African countries. So there's certainly a case to be made for that. There will certainly be some issues because the United States will be somehow involved. But I think the International Criminal Court has the ability to prosecute, and I think it will do a good job if it decides to take it on. And I think it's also important that the court is turning its attention away from Africa and looking at other countries where some of these injustices are being perpetuated. So I think it's an appropriate thing to do.
Richard, position in the United States concerning the ICC vary widely, and the Clinton administration, signed the Rome Statute in 2000, but did not really submit it for Senate ratification. The Bush administration, however, at the time of the ICC funding, stated that it would not join the ICC. Now, Obama came in and has subsequently re-established a working relationship with the court. Let me ask what you foresee Donald Trump doing with in regards to the ICC.
Yeah, personally, I don't foresee the United States signing up to the Rome Statute anytime soon. I think definitely Obama was an internationalist, and one would have expected that he would have done a little more in terms of getting the United States onto as a member of the organization. But certainly there's no support for the organization in Congress, and Congress is the one which has to ratify this treaty before it can become can enter into force in the United States. So I don't see Trump, who doesn't look like an internationalist, signing up onto this treaty. I don't think it will happen.
Richard, before the United States election, most polls in the U.S. and many more across the world, tipped Hillary Clinton to win the presidential, elections. Now the world, shook, or there was some shaking when, Trump against all odds emerged victorious on the D-Day. Were you surprised, let me ask, by the outcome of the U.S. election?
I was very surprised. I never expected. I think I told my class a million times that it will not happen, and I was very surprised that it happened. But I think we all have to appreciate that the United States is a very different country, and it tends to be very unpredictable. And this is a classic example where you cannot easily extend, or you cannot easily understand what is going on in the country, because in no other part of the world will you have such a guy as the president of the country, somebody who is insulting women, who is insulting immigrants, who is a businessman, and you don't know any of his connections, business dealings with them. We don't know a lot about this this guy, but I think that is what the people elected.
Yes, but what do you really
it.
make of his stance and proposed action regarding immigrants, especially African immigrants in the U.S.?
I think so far his immigration talk has been directed more against Mexicans. Africa did not feature a lot in the elections, in the debates, and also in the various statements made by the candidates. So we don't really know whether Africans will be targeted. And I don't believe that there are many illegal African migrants in the United States compared to people coming from Mexico. And it takes a lot to get to the United States.
After the election, most people said, yeah, it will be difficult now securing visas to the U.S. Did you foresee that happening in any part of the African countries?
It all depends on whether or not he's prepared to implement some of the statements which he made in the course of the campaigning. So in the course of the campaigning, he talked about extreme vetting, for example. So if that is going to happen, then definitely it will disadvantage some of our colleagues and brothers and sisters coming from Africa to visit the United States, for example. So if it's all a question of whether or not he will implement. And after the election, some of the statements he's made, I think you get a sense that he's walking back a little.
Yeah, he's crawling back. Yeah.
So we all have to wait and see.
But Richard, even if he doesn't actually deport illegal immigrants, do you also think that his posture and comment will really foment the divisive politics of race?
Oh, absolutely. I think the United States has always been a divided country. I think it's an illusion to believe that the United States is not. And what happened during the elections, I think, has worsened the situation. So now there's a lot of news online, even on the BBC, CNN, about churches being labeled with graffitis and all that. So a lot of horrible things are going on and have been reported. And I think his campaigning and some of the statements that he made in the course of the campaigning has made the situation worse. It has emboldened some people. And again, we just have to wait and see when he comes into office, because you can argue that sometimes just entering into office, it sobers people, and it will calm him down. It's possible once he confronts reality. That is not like a TV show or something like that. It's more complicated being a president. Maybe he will change, but if he doesn't change, then I think the world is in for a big trouble.
Richard, the narrative again is gradually widening to include how long Donald Trump will actually stay as president. Conversations are shifted from him going for, say, one term to him falling victim to impeachment, proceedings. Alan Lichman, I think a history professor who has predicted 9 conservative presidential elections, was all based on a model he created, predicted Trump would win. Now, this professor also predicted that Trump will eventually be impeached by the Republican Congress that will prefer, President Mike Pence. Again, in your opinion, do you think that Mr. Trump will, survive a first term in office?
I don't see why he won't, but he looks like somebody you cannot predict, so you don't really know what he will do on a day-to-day basis. So again, we just have to wait and see. Of course, he's not being erratic in his business dealings. I think if he was that type, he wouldn't have
Do we run a
succeeded.
presidency, or do we run a country, with a business model? I mean, I'm a good businesswoman, a good businessman, so equally I'm going to be a good president. Does it work that way?
I don't think it easily translates, but I think it will be beneficial, because the hope in the United States is that because he's a businessman, he will be able to improve the economy. I think that was a major part of his campaigning. So again, we have to wait and see, but you cannot certainly run a state like you are running a business. The state does not exist to make profit, for example. So you cannot treat human beings in a state as you treat employees or customers in a business. But again, we have to wait and see.
But let's go back a little bit. Do you think that Sanders was a better choice than Hillary? People are saying if Sanders was to be in the forefront, the story would have been different. What would you say to that?
I think it's always difficult to prove a negative. I suspect the country was just not ready to elect a Democrat. It looks like even a frog stood for the Republicans, they would have voted for him. So I don't really think it's a problem with Hillary. She certainly had some issues with these emails and things like that. But personally, I won't put it on the same level as insulting women, insulting migrants. Of course, we all have problems with emails. It's a mature woman. She doesn't know a lot about technology. So you can't expect her to be dealing with technology in the same way as a 15-year-old will be doing. But that's another. I don't think it's her fault.
So stay on. We'll be right back.
The Hard Truth with Akosia Konedu, only on Vice at 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank. At EcoBank, we see a great future. One that's full of opportunity for those who want to be the best. With over 1,000 branches of a single bank across 33 African countries. It's a future where trade can flourish without boundaries. The future is breathtaking, with enormous cross-border investments helping business and government build new infrastructure, while individuals achieve their ambitions right across Africa. The future is Pan-African, and EcoBank is the Pan-African bank.
Dr. Richard Frimpong Oppong, I don't know how to call you, whether to call you a doctor or a lawyer. How should I address you?
Richard is enough.
Well, he's being modest. So Richard Frimpong Oppong is an associate professor at the Faculty of Law, Thomson Reverse University in Canada. Richard, the chief observer of the European Union election observation mission in Ghana 2016, Mr. Thames Mesrit, has said it's very important that Ghana protect its democracy and build on it, in the upcoming election. In its broad sense, can we call Ghana, let's say, mature democratic state, and how can we build on, the election just a few weeks away?
I think I would say we are still experimenting with democracy. It takes time for democracy to develop. I think
we say that Ghana is a conk 100% democratic state. We say with so much passion. So if experimenting, it's like we are not sure what we're doing.
I think that's not what it means. It means that we're still working on it. And we've been working on it since 1992. And I think so far we've done very well with that experiment compared to the situation in other African states, such that we are now seen even as a star on the continent. So that is very important. But I think we have to appreciate that we are still developing our democracy, and we shouldn't be complacent about what we have, because it's very fragile. That's why I call it an experiment. And it can easily fall apart if we do not work towards sustaining it. And I think one of the things which we really have to do is to make sure that our institutions work. It's very important that we respect our institutions, the institution of the Electoral Commission, the institution of the judiciary, the executive, parliament, and things like that. We have to have confidence in our institutions, and we don't have to disrespect those institutions or act towards them in a manner which will undermine them. Is very important.
Richard, trust in the legal system is very vital and invaluable in every nation building. The law is a tool, that is used to perhaps seek justice, I would say. But as a tool, the law generally, served the interests of those who have property and wealth in some cases. However, getting our legal system to work more favorable for all and not just for those who have means, and ensuring fairness to all requires a lot of commitment, I would say. Now, how can the nation work together to actually achieve this?
That's an interesting question. I think we already have some mechanisms within the legal system to assist those who cannot access justice or access the legal system. So, for example, we have the legal aid scheme, which is there to assist who do not have the means to access the justice system. Lawyers are encouraged to take cases on pro bono basis to assess clients, and a lot of lawyers do that. What we don't have in Ghana, which we have in some institutions abroad, is also the universities and the faculties of law getting into the game with what are known as legal clinics. So the legal clinic serves as an opportunity for students studying law to help some of these people who otherwise will not have access to justice. So I think that is something that we have to work on to bring into our various faculties of law, so that students will, number one, have first-hand experience with the workings of the law rather than just studying law in the various lecture theatres, and at the same time they will be assisting the vulnerable in society with legal aid, with legal advice, which will go a long way.
You said earlier democracy is a work in progress in Ghana. Now, on our media airwaves now, when we talk about peace and election, people say, stop inciting the public. I mean, we've had very good elections in 2008, super election in 2012, and even in 1992. And then, it's so unnecessary to really talk about peace and the need to come together. Do you think that, or is there a rationale or a connection that says because we've had a very good election in the past years, is going to fall suit, is going to be the same as we've had?
No, I think it's important we create the awareness that, again, we are still experimenting with our democracy. It's very fragile. We have issues within the democratic setup. So I think it's important for the media to make people aware of what can happen if we do not, if we are not cautious. And I think it's important that is done. But I think at the end of the day, we should trust our institutions to work. I think your responsibility as a voter, if you take it as your responsibility, is just to go and vote. You listen to the various political parties, you make your decision, you go and vote, and you go home and you wait for the result. If that is our attitude, there will be no need for calling on people to be peaceful and things like that, because that is inherent in the voting process. Your responsibility is to go vote and go home and then sit by your radio and listen to the result. There's no need to be going around fighting with anybody, or that is not your job. Your job is to go and vote and come home. That is what happens in other legal systems. When there are elections in Canada, you don't hear about violence or things like that. You just go and vote and you come home.
So in advanced countries, it's okay. I mean, the election runs smoothly. Yes, insults in there, but the election, it's smooth. The winner is declared. Whoever loses concedes. Life goes on. But in Africa, or let's say in Ghana, it's giddy and you hear people say horrible things and insults, and your heart just sinks. What is that? What is it? Why is that so?
That's a difficult question for me to answer, but I think there's a sense, at least in Ghana, that if your party is not in, then you are out. There's a perception that the state does not exist for everybody. So it really matters that you have your political party in power, because then you benefit directly or indirectly from it. That is the only reason I can use to account for the situation here. In other jurisdictions, the state is there for everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's It doesn't really matter whether it's the Democrats
so
or
Richard,
the
again, let me ask.
Republicans.
So, is it when we ever get to the point where you are, for today's interview's sake, you are, say, NDC, I am NPP, or vice versa, and then perhaps you win or I win, then I say, oh, Richard, come help me, and then people go like, no, he's a political prostitute and he's not loyal to the party. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that is possible. I think it has happened in the past. I think the Kufuor administration drew on people from other political parties. So it's possible. I think we gradually have to move to a situation in which we focus on competence rather than political affiliation, because it's a very small country. We don't have a lot of people. So we have to definitely make use of all the talent available in the legal system or in the country. And I think the way we practice democracy, we practice it in such a way that it tends to exclude rather than bring people on board, and that is problematic.
But when we allow ourselves to actually join the other party, you think
no, I don't think it's a question of joining the other party. It's a question
help
of
Ghana.
going to serve your country. If that is the approach, then it shouldn't be a question of politics. You're going to serve your country first, then the political party comes.
The Hard Truth with Akosia Konedu, only on Vice at 1.
Brought to you by EcoBank. At EcoBank, we see a great future. One that's full of opportunity for those who want to be the best. With over 1,000 branches of a single bank across 33 African countries. It's a future where trade can flourish without boundaries. The future is breathtaking, with enormous cross-border investments helping business and government build new infrastructure, while individuals achieve their ambitions right across Africa. The future is Pan-African, and EcoBank is the Pan-African bank.
We talked about, people or everyone rallying behind Hillary and then Trump won. Well, in our part of the world here, let's say in Ghana now, 7 December, do we expect to see some surprises, or are we just going to see the usual faces that we know? What do you think?
I'm not very sure, but I think it's undeniable that in Ghana there are 2 major political parties. So you would expect that.
Can there be a miracle where, someone from
miracles
somewhere
happen, but I don't see that one going that far. I don't.
Seriously, with the wealth of knowledge and experience you have gathered whilst you were in Ghana, and all of that, why don't you come home? I mean, why are you in Canada, Sir Richard?
That's an interesting question. Why don't I come home?
Why don't you come and serve Ghana? Why are you at St. Rivers and, you are studying?
Yeah.
Yes, but so are you going to come home anytime soon?
I will definitely come home. And I'll come home.
So when is the program ending?
Which program?
You said you are schooling.
No, I'm a professor there.
Oh, you are a professor then.
Yeah.
Good, but so what stops you from coming home?
Well, I think they are complicated personal issues.
Oh, you like that?
But
you like the Canadian dollars more than Ghana
I will
cedis.
definitely come home, and I think we also have to appreciate that people can make a contribution even whilst they are outside. It's important for every country to have some of its people outside because they also make an impact. We wouldn't have had, for example, Kofi Annan if Kofi Annan was based in Ghana. So it's definitely important. There are other Ghanaians making an impact abroad, and it's all beneficial to Ghana. I think the most important thing is we have to find ways and means of drawing on their talent.
Are you coming to vote 7 December, or you stay there and listen, or watch on the internet?
I don't think I'll come back to vote, but I'll definitely encourage my people back
to vote for who?
No. They should vote for the person of their choice. They should just listen to the
really,
issues.
Finally, Richard, what would you say? What would you tell the Ghanaian populace? How many weeks more? We have barely 2 months more to election. What would you want to tell the Ghanaian populace?
We have to take our democratic experiment very seriously. As citizens, we have to appreciate that our responsibility is to listen to the various political parties, listen to the issues on the table. On election day, go and cast your ballot and walk back home or drive back home and just wait for the result. I think that is how democracy is practiced in other countries, and that is how we should practice it. There is no reason why you should be hanging around at the ballot station trying to cause violence, commotion, and things. That is not part of your responsibility. We should trust the institutions to work. The institutions have mechanisms. The various political parties will be represented at the polling station. If there is any issue, we have to work through the system. The courts are there to resolve those issues. And once the courts make a decision, I think we have to respect that. That is how countries develop. We will not always have things our own way. We have to respect the outcome of whatever happens on December 7th and then move on. Because the country is bigger than any other political party. And it will not be good for the citizens if the country falls apart, because you have to remember the big people you're voting for, it's likely they will fly out immediately and then you will be left. So you shouldn't devalue your life in that way.
Don't devalue your life. Just vote and go home and wait for the results. Thank you so much, Richard, for talking to the Hard Truth. Professor Richard Frimpong Oppong, yes, yes, Richard Frimpong Oppong, an associate professor at the Faculty of Law, Thompson Rivers University in Canada, and you've been watching The Hard Truth, and we are proudly brought to you by Octoglo Ghana Limited and supported by your favorite bank, EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. My name is Nana Akusia Knula Santos Samuels. Have a good evening. Bye.